Hi, I'm Amber, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my weekly roundup / Bout books wrap up. And this is going to be a bit early for the wrap up for Bout books, and that is just because I stopped participating halfway through, and it was my own fault for how it ended up that way, because I stayed up till 10 on Monday, and I don't stay up late. I can't actually stay up late anymore. I used to be able to stay up till 10, I probably can if I force myself, but it affects my sleeping for the rest of the week. So I stay up till 10 one night, then the rest of my week is myself trying to catch up on that sleep, and then I am so exhausted the next day that I can't really get my mind to read. Like, I can read, but I would never be able to read a whole book and comprehend what I'm reading. So the first day I did really good, of course. I was able to finish one book that day, and then the second day I started reading The Hours, and I couldn't get too far. I think I only got into one chapter, and then I was just done for the day. And I was dealing with some other issues that was just going on that I really had no way of being able to continue on. Wednesday, I've finished The Hours, and then the rest of the week, I tried to read, but it wasn't much of a success. But anyways, let's just talk about the books that I did read, and I'll talk about the 2 books that I tried to read and gave up on. The book that I finished on the first day is The Stranger by Albert Camus. This was the easiest book that I had on my TBR, because it was the shortest, and also because it was just a really quick read otherwise. So this is about an ordinary man who one day commits a senseless murder and the trial that ensues. Very philosophical book dealing with the meaning of life. Are we what society makes us be? Does our true selves show at some point? And what is humanity? Because that question is definitely brought up big time, because he's called inhuman, but is he really being inhuman? Because he can feel. I thought for part of the time that he wasn't really human, but then I realized he kind of was, but it was more like I couldn't understand where he was coming from. He was way too logical, and he kept himself aloof from life that it was just really hard. He just didn't really have emotions. Yes, he felt, but not in the typical way that a human does. And the thing is, I'm not really a person that likes philosophy. Like, I get the general sense of what philosophy is, but I am not hardcore into it. Like, psychology, I can get my head wrapped around that. When I came to Crime and Punishment, I thought that was more psychology than philosophy, and that's why I really enjoyed Crime and Punishment, but The Stranger just wasn't my cup of tea in the end. It's interesting, and if you're a person who likes philosophy and enjoys philosophical books, this is definitely for you. But for me, I just found this book quite annoying. I couldn't understand the main character, and overall, I probably am not really getting a lot out of it because I'm not philosophically inclined. In the end, I gave this 2.5 stars. The next book and the last book that I read for Bout Books is The Hours by Michael Cunningham. This is about 3 women and one day in their lives. So you have Claire, who is preparing a party for her best friend, who's being honored with an award. You have Laura, who is starting to feel suffocated and trapped in her perfect marriage and perfect life. And then you also have Virginia Woolf, who is just starting to write Mrs. Dalloway. In the end, these 3 women stories intertwine. Now, I don't really agree with that, because I just feel that Virginia Woolf was the tie-in between Laura Brown and Clarissa Vaughn. You can see how they were connected back to Virginia Woolf's book, and connected to how Laura was fascinated by Virginia Woolf's life and how she ended her life. But I just don't see how Virginia Woolf was connected directly to these two women at all, which I thought was how it was going to be somehow. And in the end, I also felt finding out the connection between Laura and Clarissa was just right at the very end, and it was all explained to you, but never really shown. And I kind of didn't appreciate that. I felt like he could have gone so much more deeper in, especially Laura's story, and I would have loved to have been shown how all the things that happened was actually there. And at the same time, there was that shock value, because once I found out, it was like, whoa. But I feel like that was the only reason why he had it at the end, because he wanted that shock value, and I really didn't care for that. But I really enjoyed his writing, and I did find each of these women's stories fascinating. If it hadn't been for the fact that we were supposed to have all these connections between these three, and the fact that I didn't feel like it worked out that well, this would have been a really enjoyable book. I just feel like he could have gone so much further, and instead of having it like them being intertwined, all three of them, he could have done without Virginia Woolf's perspective at all, and just dealt with Laura and Clarissa, and then slowly had them coming together, and then seeing Laura's life coming out more, how it led up to that day. He could have had it one day for Clarissa, because it makes sense with Virginia Woolf and like that Mrs. Dalloway, Clarissa, you know. But with Laura, I feel like he could have gone much more further on with her days, and just kept on going with it. So this one got 4 stars, but maybe it's like a 3.5. Then I tried to read the Song of Roland by an anonymous poet about the actual disaster of 778, where Charlemagne is betrayed by one of his own and his revenge. I tried to read this, but there was like no annotations, nothing to help me interpret what was being said, and so it was really disappointing to me, because I couldn't understand 98% of what was being said in the page. Because of that, I decided it was pointless trying to read it and finish it, because everything would have just gone over my head. Next, I picked up the #1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith, and then I just put it right back down. I realized that I had not one iota of interest in this book at all. I actually watched this TV show and see if that's interesting. This book series is way too long, and I don't have any interest in reading it at all. But I like mysteries, and this is not what I was expecting. When I started digging into what this was really about and how people described it, I realized that this is not something I would enjoy, so sadly wasn't going to be read. Before I go, I wanted to talk about the book that I am going to be starting to read, and that is The Monstrumologist by Rick Yancey. This is the first book in the Monstrumologist trilogy. I don't know if that's what the name of the trilogy really is, but this is where it is start. I've been wanting to read this forever, ever since Priscilla from the Readables talked about it. She talked so much about how she liked it, and ever since I've been wanting to read it, but I just haven't been able to get a chance to pick it up. So as I was thinking about what I wanted to borrow from the library, I chose this. So this is about a 12-year-old Will Henry who is insistent to a man that studies monsters and hunts them. And then grave robbers come and and things start from there. So that is all from me. Tell me down below if you've been participating in Bout of Books and what you've been reading. I'd love to hear from y'all. Thank you all so much for watching, and keep smiling.